Okay, so picture this, the late 1800s, right? The world's just humming along. Everyone's got their own problems and worries. But underneath it all, there's this, this feeling that we're on top of things, that humans, we've got it all figured out.
I think that's a really interesting point about the late 19th century.
It's like we're those little organisms under a microscope, right? Completely unaware that there's this much bigger, much smarter something looking right at us.
And then boom, that sense of certainty just shatters. That's what H.G. Wells captures so brilliantly in The War of the Worlds.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Using excerpts from the novel itself to understand the shock, the fear, the lasting impact of this fictional but incredibly thought-provoking Martian invasion.
So imagine this, it's like a normal day, maybe even a bit boring, right? And then out of nowhere, this cylinder comes crashing down.
I mean, just picture it.
And a seemingly ordinary field in Woking Well becomes this ground zero for something totally beyond comprehension.
Just makes you wonder, doesn't it?
What would it feel like to actually be there, to witness that first impossible event right in front of you?
That's the question Wells throws at us right from the get-go. And he doesn't waste any time shifting the perspective.
Oh, you mean to the Martians?
Exactly. And we're not talking about those cute little green guys with antennas here.
Right?
These are intellects, as Wells describes them, vast and cool and unsympathetic.
That's a pretty chilling description.
They look at Earth and they see it with envy. They've been watching us, studying us, strategizing, and let me tell you, their plans are not for peace and harmony.
I mean, the book really makes you question our own place in the grand scheme of things, you know.
It definitely does.
And that setting, Wells chooses late 19th century England. It feels so real, so relatable.
Oh, it's incredibly grounded.
So this first cylinder lands near Woking, and at first people are just curious.
That's right. They're almost innocent in their approach.
Like it's just some strange spectacle, the big metal tube. They even compare it to a toppled-over carriage or something.
It shows how completely unprepared they were to grasp the true alien nature of what they were facing.
There's this total failure to understand what they're actually dealing with.
This inability to even conceive of something genuinely extraterrestrial.
Well, and it's interesting how Wells slowly builds this creeping sense of dread.
He does it masterfully.
Little by little, these cracks start to appear in their initial assumptions, like the strange color of the metal, for example.
Oh, absolutely.
And the way the lid unscrews itself, it's not like anything they've ever seen before.
It's almost mechanical.
Even when the narrator arrives at the site, there's still this lingering hope,
For what?
that might be some kind of message from Mars.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Maybe carrying documents or even precious metals, who knows, right? But the sheer alienness of it all, well, it still hasn't truly sunk in.
And then what happens?
Well, then comes the moment when the Martians finally emerge, and it's pure terror.
The contrast couldn't be more stark.
It goes from scientific curiosity to primal fear in an instant. And Wells's description of them.
Yeah.
It's just horrifying.
You have to give him credit. He knows how to paint a picture.
He talks about their V-shaped mouths and the fact that they have no brows or chins like we do.
Those unnerving tentacles.
Oh, yeah, and their huge dark eyes, their oily brown skin, their awkward movements in Earth's gravity.
It's a description meant to trigger instant revulsion and fear.
And it definitely works. You can practically feel the crowd's unease turning into panic, a pure flight response taking over.
Makes sense.
And it's not just ordinary people, even someone as rational and respected as Stent the Astronomer Royal.
I remember him.
Well, even he ends up running away.
It just shows how quickly our sense of order can collapse in the face of the truly unknown.
It does make you think. Anyway, Wells then expands the story's scope, looking at the bigger picture.
What do you mean?
Well, at first the danger seems limited to the area right around that first cylinder.
Oh, right.
Wells compares the cylinder to a poison dart, and what's happening is the inflammation spreading out from it.
That's such a powerful image.
And it highlights this delayed understanding, both for the characters in the book and maybe even for us as readers.
A delayed understanding of what?
Of the true scale of the threat of how big this thing really is.
That's something we can probably all relate to in one way or another, not realizing how serious something is until it's almost too late.
Exactly. And then we get this terrifying introduction to the Martian weapon, the heat ray. The way they just casually destroy the Oriental College and that small church, it's like they're making a point.
Definitely sending a message.
They're not messing around. And it's this sudden, inexplicable destruction of familiar landmarks that really starts to shatter the initial complacency. People are finally forced to confront the unimaginable.
You're right. It's a turning point where that localized curiosity turns into widespread panic.
And the narrator's own escape from Maybury is a perfect example of this escalating fear.
It's a pretty intense scene.
It is. But what's interesting is the contrast with how people further away in London are reacting.
Like, they're just oblivious to what's happening?
Pretty much. At this stage, they're mostly unaffected, going about their normal Friday night activities.
It makes you think about our own news cycles today, doesn't it?
It really does.
How easy it is to feel detached from events happening somewhere else until they hit close to home.
Wells describes it perfectly, this dovetailing of the commonplace habits of our social order with the first beginnings of the series of events that was to topple that social order headlong. I mean, it's just so powerful and relevant.
It really highlights that human tendency toward normalcy bias.
Yeah,
you know?
normalcy bias.
Yeah, this inclination to believe that things will just keep going as they always have, even when there's evidence to the contrary.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So even with reports of a mysterious object and strange happenings in Surrey life, for most people just carried on, it's only when that direct, undeniable impact occurs, when familiar places are instantly vaporized, that the widespread panic really takes hold.
That's when that comfortable sense of normalcy shatters.
Exactly.
And it doesn't take long for the authorities to try and step in, right? But their conventional military, well, it's just no match for the Martians.
The army's completely outmatched.
Totally.
Yeah.
They deploy their Maxims and field guns thinking that'll do the trick.
Yeah.
But those are useless against the Martians' advanced shields.
It's a brutal illustration of the limits of our technology when faced with something so far beyond our understanding.
Absolutely. And then, to make matters worse, the fighting machines arrive.
Those things are the stuff of nightmares.
They are. Wells describes them as these huge tripods with a mighty great head and a hood, and they just keep using that heat ray, destroying everything in their path.
Talk about overwhelming firepower.
They wipe out Woking Station. They decimate entire artillery batteries. It makes you wonder how we would respond today to that kind of technological gap.
I mean, what could we even do?
And as if the heat ray wasn't bad enough, then they bring out those black tubes.
The poisonous black vapor, right?
Yeah, forming those ominous copses.
Just to clarify for our listeners, a copse in this context refers to these small hills or mounds created by the deadly vapor.
Right. So it's not just brute force anymore. It's this weapon that attacks the very air we breathe.
And what's truly terrifying about that black vapor is how insidious it is, heavier than air. It just settles in low-lying areas, silently suffocating anything that breathes. And then there's that detail about how it reacts with water forming this persistent, insoluble scum.
Ugh, it's just horrifying.
It really adds this layer of scientific plausibility that just amplifies the fear. Like, the environment itself is becoming hostile to human life.
As that deadly vapor spreads and news of the Martian advance reaches London, the story shifts to this mass exodus.
The flight from London.
It's pure chaos.
Total societal breakdown.
Wells describes this torrent of human beings desperately trying to escape, heading north any way they can.
Imagine being caught in that.
Locations like Westminster Bridge and Edgware, they become these choke points in this desperate flight. And there's this one scene that's particularly chilling.
Which one?
Where a man is trampled to death just for a handful of coins.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It just shows how quickly social norms can vanish when people are gripped by fear and that primal survival instinct takes over.
It makes you think about those social contracts we often take for granted, right? How quickly those can unravel under extreme pressure.
Totally. But even amidst all this despair, there are these small moments of resistance, these sparks of defiance, even if they're ultimately futile.
Like what?
Well, the naval engagement off the Essex coast, for instance, especially. The heroic, almost suicidal attack of the torpedo ram, the Thunder Child.
Oh, yeah, the Thunder Child. It's a powerful moment that shows human courage.
They're completely outgunned, but they still fight, giving those fleeing ships a chance to escape. It's a glimmer of hope, a reminder of the human spirit's capacity for bravery.
It's definitely a powerful scene.
But then we're brought back down to earth, so to speak, to the reality of life under Martian occupation.
It's a pretty grim picture.
Silent, deserted houses. That unsettling black dust covering everything. The landscape itself is transforming into something alien and hostile. And then there's that strange red weed that starts spreading everywhere.
It's like the earth itself is being infected.
It is. That red weed becomes this visual symbol of the Martian impact, a sign that they're here to stay And it's within this transformed world that the narrator gets trapped, giving us this firsthand account of the Martians up close.
And those up-close observations are the stuff of nightmares.
They really are. They're round, fleshy bodies, those huge, unblinking eyes, that creepy beak-like mouth, that almost primitive eardrum, and those 16 tentacles writhing around. It's all so utterly alien.
And let's not forget their method of feeding.
Oh, yeah. The direct injection of blood straight from a human. It's horrifying.
It emphasizes this parasitic relationship they have with us. We're not equals, not adversaries in a conventional sense, just a resource to be exploited.
And the fact that they brought their own provisions, those fragile, 6-foot-tall bipedal creatures from Mars, it just shows how calculated and clinical their approach to this invasion was.
It's a good reminder that we can't assume any alien intelligence we might encounter will have the same morals or ethics as us.
Totally. And then there's their technology, which is fascinating in a disturbing kind of way.
What about it?
Well, for starters, they don't use wheels at all.
That's weird, isn't it?
It is. The wheel is so fundamental to human technology and transportation. But they've developed in a totally different direction, relying on these smooth sliding parts and artificial musculature. Even their handling machines, which seem to operate autonomously, move with this strange alien efficiency.
I guess it just goes to show how different their evolutionary path has been.
And how little we could really predict about what's out there.
Exactly.
Later in the book, the narrator goes on this journey through the devastated landscape, eventually reaching London, which is now eerily silent, except for this one sound.
That's that.
The howling of a Martian in Regent's Park. And it's interesting, by this point, the narrator's initial terror has almost faded, replaced by this kind of numb curiosity about these creatures.
That makes sense, I guess.
It does. It's like the constant exposure to such overwhelming fear has led to this emotional exhaustion. And then he meets this artilleryman who offers a completely different perspective on humanity's future.
The artilleryman, his views are pretty bleak, aren't they?
They are. He basically accepts humanity's defeat, reducing us to eatable ants. But even in his despair, there's this spark of defiance. He talks about learning from the Martians, about maybe even turning their technology against them.
It's a glimmer of hope within that cynicism, a testament to the human will to survive.
It is. But he also has some pretty disturbing things to say about human nature.
What do you mean?
Well, he's deeply cynical about ordinary people, their resilience, their intelligence.
Doesn't exactly have a lot of faith in humanity.
He even suggests that some people might collaborate with the Martians.
That's a chilling thought.
It is. It's a reminder that even in the face of a common enemy, human behavior can be unpredictable and sometimes downright terrifying.
Definitely a sobering thought. So what happens next?
And then, just as suddenly as it started, that Martian howling stops, leaving this intense silence over London.
What about the Martians?
Well, it's after this silence that the first groups of people cautiously start returning to the city, discovering a landscape utterly transformed by the invasion.
And the Martians, what happened to them?
Well, that's the thing. They're gone. Vanished.
Just like that.
It seems so. People start to rebuild. But there are still signs of the Martian impact everywhere. And then comes this incredible discovery.
What discovery?
Scientists investigating the abandoned Martian technology, they figure out the secret of flying. It's like this glimmer of hope for humanity's future, a chance to learn and rebuild, armed with this newfound knowledge.
That's a pretty amazing turn of events.
It is. The novel ends with the narrator reflecting on the lasting impact of the Martian invasion. The loss of that initial human complacency, the memory of the silent ruined city contrasting with its eventual return to life. It's a powerful and thought-provoking ending.
It really is. The Martian invasion serves as this brutal wake-up call, shattering humanity's sense of security and forcing us to reassess our place in the universe.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the War of the Worlds, what are the key takeaways that still resonate with us today, over a century later?
Well, we've seen the swift and brutal nature of the Martian attack the initial human disbelief and the ineffectiveness of our defenses. We've witnessed the terror unleashed by alien technology, the chaos of mass flight, and the breakdown of society, and of course the unexpected end of the Martian threat. But beyond those events, the novel really explores these timeless themes.
Like what?
Humanity's assumption of dominance, the fragility of our civilization, the impact of the unknown, and the full spectrum of human responses to existential crisis, from despair to resilience to the will to survive.
It's a lot to think about. And it brings us to a final question for you, our listener.
Okay.
If we look at our modern world, with all its advanced technology and global interconnectedness, what aspects might seem equally vulnerable or incomprehensible to a truly alien intelligence?
Sure.
And how would humanity, with all our complexities and the lessons we've learned, both real and fictional, react to a similar unforeseen challenge today?
It's a question worth pondering. It forces us to examine our own assumptions about our security and control over our destiny. And it highlights the importance of staying curious, of always questioning, of never taking our place in the universe for granted.
It really does. And if you haven't already, I highly recommend checking out the full text of The War of the Worlds. And if you're interested in exploring these themes further, there are plenty of other thought-provoking works out there that deal with alien contact and societal collapse.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep looking up at the stars. You never know what might be looking back.